Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar about the Hand in Hand Haifa School. Really excited to be with you all today. We have some amazing speakers here with us, Asaad and Merav and Moran. And we'll start by just saying that if you want best to use speaker view here, and you can do that in the top right section of your screen. You can click on view and then click speaker view. So I recommend doing that. And I'm going to start by giving, my name is Noah Yammer. I'm the communications director at Hand in Hand. I'm going to start by giving an introduction, then we'll watch a little video, and then we're going to hear from our speakers. So what we're talking about today in our webinar is a Hand in Hand, specifically our Haifa school. Now, as most of you know, at Hand in Hand we run a network of bilingual integrated schools for Jewish and Arab children in Israel. Throughout the country, we have 2,000 students and over 10,000 members of our communities, and we're growing. And we exist because, as most of you know as well, the regular school system in Israel is divided. So children are going to separate schools, and around 25 years ago almost, a group of parents, including Lee Gordon, who's on this call with us today, founded the first small classroom, which then has grown since then to what we have today, which is around over 2,000 students. And around 10 years ago, a group of parents in Haifa, including some of the people on this call today, decided that, Haifa as a mixed city really should have an integrated school, right? Because students were living in the same buildings as each other, and still every day they would get up and go to school in different places. And so there was a group of parents, a revolutionary group of parents around 10 years ago, who decided they wanted to do something different and build a school. And it started very small. They've been through many, many ups and downs. And today they have a thriving school. And now we're kind of in the next mode of growth, looking to grow from an elementary school into a high school. And we're going to hear all about that. But first, let's, Andrea, if you could cue up the video. This was a video we made about the Haifa school and community just, I think, 2 weeks ago. So it's like, just to give you a peek into what it really looks like and feels like to walk around the school, and then we'll keep talking from there.
Hi, welcome to our school, Hand in Hand Haifa. I'm 10 years old and I'm in 4th grade. What makes the school different than other schools is that I have friends, also Jewish and also Arab, from different places. I go to their house after school, or they come over. You have more friends that way.
Also, you can meet people that you never think you can meet.
When we come here 9 years ago, we see a small group of kids that they are playing together, and we want to join this community. Today we are 300 kids in Yad B'Yad school in Haifa.
When I joined the community here in Haifa, I was really amazed to see the relationships between the Arab and Jewish families. They were going to each other's homes for play groups. They were taking care of each other's kids if they couldn't pick them up after school.
In every class, we have 2 teachers, one Jewish and one Arabic.
We don't only learn the classes in one language, we learn them in 2, Arabic and Hebrew.
The teachers help you to become the person you're going to be. They teach us to be caring, they teach us to think critical. These 2 things together is power.
Our teacher for art, she said that there's no right or wrong in art, like you can just do whatever you feel like.
And the teachers here care about us.
The community is the center of my life. For me, my wife and my kids. We've done a lot in 10 years, and we are expecting for the next 10 years.
מה קורה? אז תקבלי עוד שנתיים את סם שלו ואת כנן שלי.
כן, בטח.
I see in my 10-year-old son Yair his ability to have complex conversations with his Arab friends. And Yair has a deep understanding of the conflict.
What's the idea?
Basically that it's real. But it's real. Like, it's not, like we're making a video about it, but it's real.
Are you currently?
Thank you. So that was a little glimpse into our Haifa school and what it looks like and feels like. And with that, I will introduce our speakers for today. So you'll see Asaad and Merav, who are sitting together because they are neighbors and friends, two of our leading community members. Asaad is the co-chair of our community committee, and Merav is an active community member and has been for many years, and also has in the past served as our community organizer and also one of the directors of the community program at Hand in Hand. And after that, we'll talk to Moran, who is the current director of operations at Hand in Hand and also was the very first director of the preschool in Haifa when it was just starting. Great, thank you for highlighting us. That I will hand it off to you, Merav and Asaad, and then we'll go to Moran. Just tell us about who you are and your connection to Hand in Hand.
Ladies first. Okay, so hi, and it's good to see everyone. Welcome from the United States. We're happy to have you join us in Haifa. If you could see in back of me, I'm sitting on Asaad's roof. We're next door neighbors and friends, as Noah said, and we have a great view of Israel's northern region. I am one of the founding parents of the school, and I think what really motivated me. I came back to Israel. I grew up both in the United States and in Israel, and my degree I got at NYU in international education. And when my kids were very, very young, I came back from the States, from New York, back to Haifa, where I had grown up as a kid. And I'd gone to high school here, and I lived up here in the Carmel and went to, college, university. And I'd never had Arab friends, and I never met Arab people other than, what you interact with in like service in gas stations or in restaurants or when you're traveling up north. We really I didn't know anyone Arab, and I just returned from the United States, and I studied the field of peace education because, we live in a region where I feel that if we don't actively work for peace and teach our kids to imagine peace, it's never going to happen. So that was the field that I had studied. And when my children were very, very young and I came back to Haifa, I said, how is it possible that a school where we could teach our children together, where our children can grow up together, doesn't exist? As you can see, we're neighbors. We live in the same neighborhoods, but we don't have a shared school. So together with other parents and really people we met in the playground and people we met out in restaurants, we said, let's do it. Let's make a difference. Let's change this idea that we can't educate our children together. And we started 10 years ago in 2012, the first bilingual integrated school in Haifa. So that's my little introduction.
Thank you, Merav. Yeah, Asaad, you want to just continue right from there?
Yeah, so I'm Merav's neighbor and now one of my closest friends. I'm a father of two boys that goes to the school, 7-year-old and 9 years old. Married to Basma, my wife. She works here for Intel, a US company. We've been here in Haifa now 9 years, and we joined the school 2 years after it started as a kindergarten. I'm an investor today in high tech. I'm a partner in a VC fund in Israel. But I was born in Akko. Akko is also a mixed city, 20 kilometers north of here. Although it was a mixed city, I didn't have any interaction with Jewish kids my age. We go to a separate schools. As you know, in Israel, there's a total segregation between Arab, Jewish, secular Jewish, Orthodox, and ultra-Orthodox schools. So for some reason, it's totally segregated. And you can grow up in a city which would have neighbors, but you will never meet them. You don't have an interaction. So at the age of 15, I moved to Haifa with my family. And then I decided that I want to have some Jewish friends. So my opportunity was to go and work in McDonald's that was opened here up in the mountain of the Carmel during the weekends. And I suddenly
have friends and people that are my age and are Jewish, and I realized that they're not that different from me. And basically, it changed all my perspective about how Israelis should live in this country. And therefore, after I went to university, I spent some time in Tel Aviv. I went to Tel Aviv University. I worked there for a big holding company. And then once I heard that the school, the bilingual school, opened in Haifa, we went back to Haifa. We moved here, me and my wife, and we're so happy to be part of this community. Last year, I joined the Yad B'Yad community, or we call it the leadership community, that is basically parents from the school that is leading to the community towards a sustainable growth and let's say, dealing with all the crises that we're having now with the municipality. We'll talk about that later. So I'm a co-chair of this community along with Lior Rinot from the community as well. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Asaad. Thanks so much for that introduction. And now Moran, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Moran Ofek from Haifa also. I live in Haifa. I work in hand for 10 years now in different titles and different missions on the organization. Actually, I got to hand in hand. I work in education all my life. I'm 43 now. I work in an education field since I remember myself, probably since I was 14, 15, from youth movement. And social change was always my main goal, my main motivation. And I think most of the years I thought that the biggest impact I can get is working with my group. Always with my group, because working with other groups was also always something that you have to be sensitive about it. You have to be careful about it, not to do the wrong things. I said, okay, I work with my group, also always with my group, until 2007. We had a big wave of asylum seekers from Sudan that got here from Sudan genocide in Darfur. They got to Egypt, from Egypt to Israel. And I had to be the main manager of one educational project with them. And suddenly, in the middle of my life, I had to learn Arabic. All my life, like Asaad said, I lived in Israel. The next village was Arab. My village was always Jewish. My town that I lived, my small village that I moved to, was always only Jewish people, only Jewish neighbors. The community was always Jewish and always Hebrew speakers. And I suddenly had to speak Arabic for my job, for my mission. And I took one course of 1 month, probably 10 or 12 hours a day, learning Arabic, very intensive immersion course. And I got back there speaking Arabic. Basic, not the best, but basic Arabic. But it opened something in my mind, opened something that I had to meet these people that had to go through, unfortunately, genocide, and then in the Egyptian prison, and then in the Israeli prison, and then working in their big dream, working as cleaning people in the hotels in Eilat, in one of the cities here. And they had to do all this for my lesson, that I'm part of the Middle East. I'm not part of some European cultural area or some North America cultural area. We hear only English music. We see only American movies. So from my perspective as young Jewish man in Israel, my perspective was always, we are part of Europe and the US. And suddenly I got this in my face. My neighbors, my friend, my occupation, my mission is supposed to be focused on the area and focused on my real neighbors. So something opened for me in that point. And my MA was about studying the shared education hand in hand and other projects. And during my MA, I decided to freeze my thesis and not going all the way. I finished it later. But because I was part of the group with Merav, that we decided we have to open a shared integrated bilingual school in Haifa. And in the beginning, it was very hard. The mayor, he didn't want us to do anything. He was shouting at us that we are doing the wrong thing for the coexistence in Haifa and stuff like that. But we knew that we are right, and we had our dream, and we opened the kindergarten in the beginning, the nursery with babies, actually with 1-year-old babies in the beginning. And from being just an activist, we both, Merav was the first one and I was the second one, from being activist volunteers in this Haifa group, we became, we started working for Hand in Hand. Merav as a community organizer, and I was the principal, the first principal of the kindergartens that grew to the school later with a big success. Happily, I'm now happy to say that I'm part of a big integrated Jews and Arab group of parents with kids on the waiting lists. So after 10 years after I was the first principal of this kindergarten and school, now I had to wait 1 year to put my little girl first born on the kindergartens. So it's for me it's great. So next year I will be also parent in the kindergarten. And now after that I worked in the pedagogical department on Hand in Hand, and now I'm part of the management.
Thanks, Moran. And thanks for bringing us back to those first years. We kind of want to, because what we're doing now is this year is really like celebrating those 10 years. And Andrew, can you highlight all of us? Just like all the speakers, thank you. So because it's exciting, because it started 10 years ago, and there's still more to go, but we have come a very long way in 10 years. And I'd love to hear, I guess, from any of you who can talk about a little bit about like what that was like, that from nothing to then create something. Like what were those first years like of creating the school and building the community? Maybe Merav, you want to start, and then we'll go from there.
So as I said, I'd grown up in Haifa, and I returned to Haifa with small children, really, really convinced that we should be exposing our children to the diversity and the richness of the cultures and the languages that we have around us here in Haifa. And, it's one-dimensional, the Israel education system, which is a subject of a different webinar, why that is, why Israel's educational system segregated. But to me, it seemed clear that, I want to raise kids and let them enjoy the richness. I don't speak, unfortunately, I don't speak Arabic. I'm now learning, my third child is in second grade with Asaad and Basma's son, Adi, and as he's learning the letters, and as he was on Zoom learning Arabic, I'm learning Arabic with him. But I think it's horrible. So really, we had small children. I walked around like pulling parents into this idea that maybe we could start a school together. And we sat around and talked about what we see as our vision, the idea of how to make something equal, more equal in an unequal society, because really what we're building, what we wanted to build is also, not this idea that, some have more, or there's one identity, the Jewish or Israeli Jewish identity that is stronger, which is what happens in most of Israeli society. We really had to talk between us to convince our Arab friends, our Arab parents, that what we wanted to create was a place where everyone was equal. Even though it's not an equal society, we wanted to create for our children, even when they were young, a place that allows both identities in terms of the national identities, but we have Jews and we have Christians and we have Muslims and religions and languages. We have also Baha'i in our program, because Haifa has the Baha'i community, which is a little bit different than the rest of Israel. But we sat around and talked, and these conversations that I had when we were building our schools, and our kids were really, really small, meaning that we talked about equality and all these values, but the kids, they just needed, someone to take care of them and sing them songs and draw drawings with them. And it was simple. So that was like a big advantage, because when we finally did, put together a group of 14 kids and walked around the city and tried to find a space for them, and ended up in a very simple garage. It was really a backyard garage, and ended up having a beautiful yard. So the yard was what attracted the parents and said, okay, we can bring our kids here, because they're going to be in a small space during some of the day, but most of the day they're going to be outside. And we brought our 2-year-olds in. What we as parents did was also talk about what we see as like the bigger idea, how we're going to teach them identity, how we're going to teach them the relationship between Jews and Arabs and our histories. And I think the years that they grew up allowed us a lot of opportunity also to grow as a community and grow our relationships, because again, we weren't friends before. Now we're friends. On Thursday, we're going to go on a big camping trip, our whole community. So it's going to be around between 60 and 70 families, Jewish and Arab, to one of the camping sites up north. And on the one hand, it's so natural and so regular, but on the other hand, it's, there's nothing like this in Israel. Nothing like a group of Jewish and Arab families, 60, 70 families, who are going to go and hang out together. And we're friends anyway, so it's going to be fun. And we're going to, there's a whole discussion about the food, who's bringing what, and the alcohol, and and this idea of having this kind of group together seems so natural, but it's really, really different than what happens in Israel. And I think anywhere else in the world between Jews and Arabs. So this idea that through the education, we can change and have impact. Moran, you said social impact and social change through education is really powerful. And maybe later we can also talk about what it has done to Haifa as a city.
Yeah, definitely.
Year during May.
Yeah, I'd love to give that. Thanks, Merav. So I love that you highlighted the community aspect, right? Because I think hand in hand in our spaces, we're running schools, but we're also running communities, right? There's a community organizer in every place, and also there's community committees and steering committees, and the parents and the connections between parents is a huge part of what we're doing. It's definitely not just about the kids going to school every day together, right? Something so much wider than that. And I'm wondering if, Asaad, you want to add anything about the community part of this, what that is for you and your family, and maybe how you see that impacting broader. And after that, we'll hop to Moran to hear more about the education side.
Basically, from the community side, for me personally, my network of people has changed through these 8 years. My closest friends are parents, basically, from the school. We are 4 families even living in the same neighborhood now. We moved because one of us moved here and we joined them. And we even travel abroad together. Basically, it's a real relationships. It's just something parents from the school. And you don't see that in other schools in Haifa, basically. Merav had kids in other schools that are older than the age of, our school kids. And they don't have that relationship with the parents of their older kids' schools like they have with us, which makes it amazing. And just for example, to understand the impact of it, when we go to these events of camping, 200 kids, Arabs and Jews together, running in between people and trees and whatever, the strangers, they listen to the kids speaking together, sometimes in Arabic and sometimes in Hebrew. They come to us, ask us, who you are. Like, are you Arab families, Jewish families? What? We don't get that. Like, it's weird. Although for us, it's natural. You know, you will see Jewish kids speaking Arabic with their friends and Arabic friends speaking with their Jewish friends in Hebrew, and it's normal. And it looks strange to other people, but they try now, as the bigger we become, the more impact we will have across the country.
Thanks, Asaad. Moran, I'd love to hear a bit more about the education. You know, you were starting a school kind of from scratch, and you were the director. And like, how did you think about teaching bilingualism, teaching multiculturalism, things like bringing together the two communities in one educational space for the children?
I think Hand in Hand had this model for many years, but we started from basic values. I think from telling to ourselves and to the society that separate can never be equal, and if we want to do some more equal society, we have to break this separation. We have to do this integration and learn together. But it's so not the main thing once you get inside. I mean, the beginning, maybe it's these values of separate can never be equal, but when you get inside, you understand that you're going back to the main values or main goals of education. You are changing people's mind in a good way, or your mind and others. Like Asaad said, in the beginning, we as educators, we didn't understand what we are doing. And the families, the parents, they didn't understand what they can ask, what they can dream about. We're talking about things that in Israel you cannot dream. You cannot dream about the impact of integration when you never saw integration. You never lived integration. All your life you lived and you learned only in Hebrew schools, Jewish neighborhoods, Jewish villages, towns. So you cannot understand the impact of integration. In the beginning, there are some of the Arab, let's say generally, I don't like to say it, but generally, some of the people, they said, okay, I come to this place because of the equality, because my kids can feel equal, Jews and Arabs, but I don't believe in these community things. Only after 1 or 2 years, these parents said, we understand that we didn't send our kids to the school. We got ourselves to the schools. We got ourselves to this kind of process that suddenly changed our network, suddenly changed our friends. Suddenly we sit on coffee places, we go out to hang out, we go out not only for organized camping, also just afternoon, spontaneously. This is my friend now. It's a big change. In the beginning, the Hebrew language is so dominant, it's so hegemonic in Israel that it's unfortunately it's basic knowledge that all Arab people will learn Hebrew, but no Jewish kids will learn Arabic. Even if they learn in bilingual school, the parents said they will not learn Arabic. It's good that they will learn together again and feel equal and multicultural, but they will never learn Arabic. It's minority language. There is no use for talking Arabic in Israel. Maybe when they will go outside to travel in Arab countries, but we cannot go travel in Arab countries, so we will never need Arabic. We cannot dream about seeing our kids speaking Arabic. So we said it's not a dream, it's not a goal. But after 1 or 2 years, when your kid is coming back home speaking Arabic as a Jew parent, you said, wow, I want Arabic to be the main courses. I want more lessons of Arabic. I want them to get to higher level in Arabic. I want them to speak fluently Arabic. Suddenly, it's changed our dreams. It's changing the way we think. It's changing the way we can dream about it's not coexistent. It's just shared education and shared society. So in the beginning, we're talking about changing our minds and people's mind, It's for everyone. It's not only about politicians. It's not only the mayor that was so conservative and he said we are the best shared city in Israel. It's the best city for the relationships for Jews and Arabs, Haifa, yes? But don't bring me this bilingual school. It's not the right way. He could not dream the benefits and the impact this city can get from this. But after 5 years, we had our kindergartens, and he saw the impact, and he saw the community, and he saw how many benefits the city got from this. He put our picture on his on his wall on Facebook, and opened our public first grade and school and etc. But it's not only the politician, it's also the parents. In the beginning, in the first year, like Merav said, she had to go from a park to park, from nursery to nursery, from place to place, from home to door, bring kids. And everybody said, it's a good idea. Maybe we will come visit. But I don't know. So the first year started with 9 or 10 kids, 8 in the beginning, 12 in the end of the year, if I remember correctly, and I think I am. But once they were there, once we had these 10 people, 10 small babies, 1 year old, 1.5 years old, that were already there playing together with their education staff, with their parents, the next year we had waiting lists. We opened 3 kindergartens and we had another 50 people on waiting lists. So people need to see things to imagine them.
Yeah,
And
to imagine that.
It's like this circle. You have to see something to dream about it, but you have to dream something that is not there yet to do it. And that's our game. That's our game. That's the impact. The impact is firstly on the kids, but not only. It's on the parents, the staff. It's on the city, the society around us, the grandparents, everyone around with these circles.
Yeah. Thanks, Moran. Exactly. And I think that kind of maybe brings us into, where we are now. And I wonder if, Asaad, you want to say more about, because we built a school. There are currently 270 students in the school, from including the kindergarten up to the 6th grade. And yeah, I'd love for you to say more about where we are now. I also want to open to questions. So if anyone on the call has a question, please, you can use the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, so we know you have a question. Yes, so thanks, Asaad.
Okay, so first of all, we're a public school. So it was a decision that was made by the parents. We had the option to make it a private school, but we insisted on having the school as a public school so it could be open to any citizen from Haifa that is interested to send his kids to such a school. So as Moran mentioned, we started as a kindergarten, and then we grew every year. And eventually when we reached to, the elementary school, the 1st grade, we went to the municipality. At that time, that was Yonah Yahav, the mayor of Haifa. That was 6 years ago. And at the beginning, he was opposing this idea, and eventually he was convinced. But he didn't have the premises or the building to host the school. So he asked us to be hosted in another school, an Arab school in Haifa called Ahmadiyya, to spend there some time until they find a solution for us. So we spent there 3 years in improvised classrooms in the courtyard of the school. And after we had a lot of demand for the school from both Jews and Arabs. By the way, I saw a question here on the chat box. So today we're almost 60% Arabs, 40% Jews in the school. But we have families in the waiting list, both Arabs and Jews, that are interested to send their kids to the school. But unfortunately, because we're limited in space, we have only the opportunity to have 1 class at each classroom. So we can't take all the kids into the school. Otherwise, we will be, I think, around 50-50. So we spent 3 years in Ahmadi school. And then when we reached the 4th grade, there was no more room. So the new mayor was at that time Kalish, which is the current incumbent mayor, asked us also to move to another school, to be hosted there. We still don't have our own building. And that was a Jewish school in a let's say, mid-low class neighborhood in Haifa. And it created some kind of challenge for some of our parents. We even had a crisis because some parents said we should start a struggle against the municipality. We shouldn't accept that offer. But eventually we accepted the offer. We didn't want to, at that time, to go for a struggle. We said, okay, we're growing. Let's first give this new mayor an opportunity. And we moved to that school. And that was 3 years ago. They promised us to have our own building in the 2 years from now, from that time. And eventually we didn't have that. Even we reached now the 6th grade. So we've been like 6 years being hosted at other schools. Then we decided 2 months ago to start a struggle, basically an active struggle against the municipality, against the Ministry of Education for not giving us a building, the minimum that we can get as a school, as a growing school and a successful project in the city. The interesting point about it is that the mayor is really interested in the school. Like, she's genuine. She said, yeah, I think it's an important project that we have in Haifa. You know, the capital of coexistence, the capital of shared society city in the country. We should have that project. And she's working on, you know, a solution. But unfortunately, it took some time and we had to do the struggle. The good thing about it is that we basically brought our kids to demonstrate in front of the municipality building. And it was a good, basically, education for the kids to speak up, to ask for your right. And it was in a nice way. It wasn't violent or something. It was really peaceful. We even had like a lot of homework around it. We did even a demonstration in front of the Ministry of Education offices in Haifa. And I think eventually we were successful. You know, we're still, fingers crossed. We don't have yet a promise in writing, but we have a promise from the ministry and from the municipality to get the building for the elementary school, meaning from 1st class to the 6th class in a school which is empty in Kiryat Eliezer neighborhood in the city. We have a promise to have public kindergartens because until today our kindergartens are private. And our 6th grade, that is going up to the 7th grade, which is like some kind of a high school in Israel, they asked us again to be hosted in another school, a school called Ironi Aleph in Haifa, which is a very old school, was built 70 years ago with the establishment of the state. And it's a very tough neighborhood. So, and it's a big school. We have like 700 kids in that school and our classroom is very small, literally. So it's creating a challenge. We're still examining the opportunity to go there for an intermediate period to see if that can happen, but we're still in negotiations with the government, with the Ministry of Education, the municipality, and our community parents. You're on mute, Noah.
You're on mute.
Sorry, there was something loud outside before. I said, thank you, Asaad. This is kind of a never-ending process, but we're growing. And what I've been feeling as I watch the videos of Haifa or I visited the school is just so much energy, right? Like there's so much energy within the parents and with the students to kind of to show up and make sure that you at first it was you had 9 kids in a small room and you just had to fight to get recognition of the preschool. And then you got the recognition. Then you have to fight to start the elementary school. And we started the elementary school and it's a public school. But now the next layer is, okay, to get our own building and our own independent school and to move into that middle and high school level. And I've been feeling like there's just been so much energy from the parents. And that's, what got us to to already where you've gotten, which is at least a verbal promise that that's something that's coming up really soon. And we're going to, keep working. And that's just kind of and this is true for, I can just in a zooming out way to like all of Hand in Hand schools, like every school is in their own moment of growth. And it's so much of the growth that happens is because of these really, really dedicated parents and activists from locally. And in a global way, we just last week had a big meeting in the Knesset. We're invited. There were also parents from Haifa and from all of our communities to start promoting Hand in Hand on the countrywide level, on a policy level from from the Ministry of Education. So that's definitely, those are all things that we're working on. There was this one question in the chat, and I might ask it to Asaad because it's about the Palestinian side. Do you find there's any pushback? They said that they recognize that there's some pushback from Jewish Israelis towards hand in hand, and we're wondering about if there's pushback from the Palestinian community to hand in hand.
So I have to say, like in the past, it was difficult for the Palestinian population here to think about going to school with Jews. There were some families that send their kids, to the existing, let's say, Jewish schools like the Re'ali in Haifa or Leobik, but that was the different. And usually it was tough for the kids because, they have a different identity and they go to school that teaches a different narrative, and they don't look at it. They don't look at them as Palestinians, they think that they're Israeli Jews. So it was tough. But I think in the last 15 years, once the Israeli, like my age, my generation, let's say, 30th to 45, let's say, that we started being integrated into the Israeli economy. So we work with Jews, we go, to the multinational companies or Israeli companies, and we work together. And suddenly you realize that we're not different, right? We have the same basically needs, right? We need our kids to be successful. We want to have a good income. We want to have, enjoy our life, take care of our parents, travel abroad. Why can't we go to school together? Like, why can't we send our kids to school together? And the good thing about the school as well, that helped, the Palestinian community to be more in favor for it, is that in this school, we teach our Palestinian kids their identity. Unlike Arabs in Arab schools, I went to just a normal Arabic school here in Haifa. We didn't learn anything about our history or identity. We basically learn about Zionism, even the Bible, the Torah, and the history of Islam, but nothing about who we are. In this school, our kids, they have their own identity, and they know the narrative of their Jewish friends, and they're well familiar with the conflict, and they know how to deal with it. So once they, graduate from the school, they have more tools to survive in this tough place. And I think potentially they are leaders of our community. That's why I think today there's a better approach. You can see that, Yad B'Yad have now 7 schools, and there's a big demand from the Arab society towards learning in the school. In some cities like Haifa, I think there's a lot of demand from the Jewish side as well. Although in Israel in general, I think it's still an alternative education, unfortunately, although it should be the standard, the normal way of how kids should go to school.
Yeah, thanks, Asaad. Does anyone else want to add about that question around pushback from people in the community? Is that something that you find is a part of your lives as people who work and are involved?
And I think as what this person asking the question said, to be in Haifa, Jewish parent, we have lots of options. We can send our kids to an excellent, private, high-achieving school. We can send our kids to an arts school. We can send our kids to, democratic school. We have lots of options. My friends who are not, my Jewish friends who I grew up with, who are not in our community hand in hand, are like, yeah, it's nice what you're doing, but there's no way on earth they would consider doing this. I think it's really not the norm. Unfortunately, to me, it seems totally, something that our kids are getting so much out of, and us as parents, but it's not the norm. It's not the norm in Jewish society. It's not the norm in Arab society. I think there is some fear of losing identity on both, for both sides. Losing identity, teaching our kids or mixing them up. Kids are like, oh, how can you be, celebrating Christmas? The kids are going to want to have a tree in their house. How are you celebrating, Eid al-Fitr? The kids don't understand the differences. And when they're young, our kids who go from holiday to holiday, which is how the Israeli education is, they really are mixed up a little bit. But I think it all falls into place at some point. And having grown up also in America, I know that in America, Jewish education is done at home often, or done in other, in community spaces and not in public school. So I think what we're showing, that public education and sort of a multicultural approach that allows all of the narratives and all of the religion and all of the different traditions to be present, gives us this broader, view of the world. And yes, people are fearful of it. People are fearful that their kids, might want to be something else. We see that in all societies. I think we're opening up the option. And I think in the end, I know that different research has shown that our kids actually come out with a stronger identity, both the Jewish and the Arab, because they interact, because they question, because they have to ask, wait, my friends who are Arabs, what do they believe in? How do we believe differently? Where do we come together? Where can we not agree ever? But our kids are daily, even in the young age, asking about these things, and therefore they end up being actually stronger in their identity in terms of what we're educating.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, Merav. Yeah, sometimes I find that people assume the opposite, right? They assume that if you meet someone else, then you lose yourself, but actually that's that moment of meeting someone else and getting to be curious about them and having someone else ask you questions and curious about you can actually really strengthen a sense of self. And that's kind of what we've been seeing in the classrooms. Okay, we're winding down in our last bit of this. And so I just want to, let's look towards the future a little bit. I'm curious what you're hoping for the future in Haifa in general, Hand in Hand. I know, Moran, you work in the whole organization, so you might have a more broader view, but as you think towards moving ahead, what are we moving ahead towards?
I'll just say quickly that Joseph, one of our community friends, once said that we're gonna in the end build a mixed cemetery, bilingual cemetery, Jewish, which also doesn't exist in Israel. You're buried by religion. So that's where we're going to end up. That's the future.
Interesting. Interesting. Impact. I also would love to ask if you want to add in terms of the future question about how Hand in Hand is influencing the city beyond, right? So how is it influencing now, and how do you want it to be impacting the city?
I think our dream and our goal is, again, to change society's minds, people's minds about integration, because now we see this change. Integration was the most radical word to say 20 years ago. Nobody can imagine integration. Even if you were left-wing political views, humanistic values, it would be only in the Jewish community and in the Arab community separately. Integration was not, you could not think about it. And we saw it in the first 2-3 years, and maybe also now with new parents with their first kid in the system, that they came with some open mind, and of course they choose this school. But what about their parents, the grandparents of the kids? Usually they came with with many questions. Let's say, what would happen? What would happen with my grandson's identity? What would happen with my grandson's mind and thoughts and values? So in the beginning, they were very conscious, waiting outside, taking their grandson, going to the park. But then after a few times they came and they just saw it's normal, like the parents, like the kids. They saw it's normal. You can hang out. And then suddenly we had this end of the year parties, like for every group separately. and suddenly we had more grandparents than parents. Suddenly all the grandparents wanted to come because it was so crazy for them. And I think this is the goal, not to be underdog, not to be the radical group that is doing some few small schools behind something. We want to change the system. We don't want to be outside of the system. We want to change society. We don't want to build some fences around us and build this small community. We want the shared education to be an option. Not everybody has to choose it, because most of the cities people cannot choose it because the cities are not integrated. So probably you cannot build an integrated school in a non-integrated town or city. But in the integrated areas, in the integrated city, in the integrated villages, towns, we want it to be an option from up, from top down, not from grassroots. The beginning, we are grassroots. We still work from grassroots. We still work the community, try to do this change. My dream, it's to be normal. This will be the normal option. This will be the normal option for society, and also top down from the government, from the education system.
I know, if may I add also.
Yeah, please add, Asaad and yes.
I think beside, like if we're talking long term, beside the growth of the school from kindergarten to basically high school, and I assume at a certain point we will have at least like 2,000 or 3,000, let's say, kids in that school. Beyond that, I think what we're trying to do is bring this project to people who are not part of the school. So first of all, like we have some ideas about basically starting a youth movement, which is shared. So like in Israel, you have mostly scouts that either are Jews or Arab. You don't have mixed. So we're thinking to doing such like that in Haifa. If we find, let's say, the right funding for it, and maybe we'll get support from municipality, we don't know yet. But since we were really focused on the crisis that we had with the municipality, I hope that once we resolve that, we start working on other projects like the youth movement. And also we're thinking about like ideas of having like a multicultural festival in the city that can happen like once a year and bring like people from all over the country for like a music festival, music and food. We have some ideas. But again, the good thing about our group is that we're a big group of really people with a lot of energies and they want to do. So we have to take that power, this energy, let's say, generation, and do more projects that can bring this message to other Israelis outside of our school as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Asaad. Merav, do you want to add something?
We're ending on such an optimistic note that I am a little bit worried, because I don't want to ruin it, because I think what we've done in Haifa is really so wonderful and has changed my life, and as you've heard, many people's lives. But at the same time, just a year ago, we saw things that happened in Israel's mixed cities, even here in Haifa, Jews and Arabs rioting against each other. And I think in general, if you follow a little bit the politics of Israel, we're in a time where things are getting more and more extreme. And next to the fact that we're successful because I think we offer great option. We're doing progressive education. We're giving kids and families really a good option. Most of Israeli society is pulling apart, and there's more hostility between Jews and Arabs in the country. And I think, what we've said here, Moran and Asaad, is bringing our ideas, our values of shared living, of shared education and shared communities to the rest of the country, and showing that it's a possibility, showing that there is people even in Haifa. It looks like, we're doing something great, but people even in Haifa are not aware that we exist. That there's a school like us, that there's, friendships. My friends don't understand the depth and how powerful what we're doing is. So, and I think we have a huge job. I think we're not in a good place in Israeli society, and I'm really very concerned about the violence that we saw last year that can, easily, with the right, with events happening, can happen again. And just to keep and show and be an alternative to coming apart, to violence, to hate, I think at the most basic level, what we're doing needs to be strengthened and needs to be, spread as far as we can. Wherever people are willing to do this and want to be part of this, we need to have to be able to allow them to join.
Yes. Thank you so much. I think that was really important to add into the conversation because, because that's what we're up against, right? And I think with that, we believe in what we're doing, and we see the hope that's in the school and in our own community, and we also see the huge challenge that's ahead of us, that's around us right now. And with that, I think we're going to close. So I just want to thank everybody for being here with us, for listening, and for being our partners in this mission as we continue to fight the good fight and to continue to build schools where our children are growing up together. So yeah, please stay in touch with us. If you have any questions, you can email Lee. You can find us on our website. So really, thanks for being with us. And yeah, here's the next 10 years in Haifa. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you all.